People ask me often, what's the moon made of? Well, interestingly, the moon is a child of Earth, so it's made a lot of what Earth is made of.
Everybody knows the moon's made of cheese.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
It's a puppy!
Hello and welcome to Don't Break the Oath podcast. How the devil are you all?
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave an Apple podcast review now. That's what it's called, for whatever reason. That's all changed. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, today we will be talking mainly about some ghost stories.
Yeah.
We've got
Cage?
The Cage, which is like a medieval... You call a prison, but it's more of a holding cell.
Yeah, holding cell or holding centre.
Back in the medieval times, were meant to have held witches and that kind of stuff.
Also, people had the plague and they just left to die there. So
yeah, so
there's quite a few.
Bit of a checkered history. There's a little clip here that we can play of the present owner talking about what's going
Vanessa?
on there.
Time as well. My flatmate Nicole at the time, she lived with me for the first year there. She'd also seen things, and it was when that she left, and then I started getting quiet. You know, it's like, oh no, I'm on my own, and you kind of don't mind if there's someone there. Nicole, did you see that? But it's when you're on your own, it got really
you
bad.
actually got used to the ghosts, is what you're saying. You got used to them being around you. What was the point that then made you say, I can't live here anymore?
One day I was doing the ironing downstairs, and my son Jesse was only about 4 or 5 months old. He was upstairs, and then I was downstairs in the cage, which is the prison room, and his toys started going off, and I thought, oh, here we go again. And I thought, anyway, ignore it, don't panic, because sometimes you do get an instant fear. Sometimes in there, it was kind of okay, because it comes with a feeling, it's hard to explain. And then it was a bit of a, I felt quite panicky, the toy. Anyway, I went upstairs with the ironing, and I saw a man standing at the top of the stairs right next to Jesse's cot. And I thought that was one of the last things, to be honest.
Because he was near your baby?
Yeah, and he had modern day clothes on. He wasn't, when I'd seen Jack in there, he was old-fashioned.
Wasn't a burglar or something?
No, Eamon, he wasn't there. He was a ghost. He definitely wasn't a human person.
So that's that. So, and then my story is going to be about how the Russians tried to tame poltergeists in order espionage reasons, really. But before we do that, just wanted a little bit of housekeeping before the paranormal news. Just to say that we had a review from Smokey424, basically saying that we didn't argue a toss with Santos about the flat Earth. Which, yeah, I take his point on board, but the problem is obviously we can't just lambast the guest because that's not going to work. And
we don't do that.
The problem with the flat Earth thing is I asked him a question, but fully expecting people to already know where I stand on the issue, which, because we've done a show on it, I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
But obviously, for whatever reason, Smokey didn't know that, so he's assumed that I've just agreed with him. But I didn't agree. We just agreed to disagree, because we don't go around in 10-minute circle just going on, because it's not going to change his mind at the end of the day.
No, of course not. No.
But that being said, we also had a review in America where it said that we weren't skeptical enough. But again, we could talk for 10 minutes on every UFO case, it being Venus or a weather balloon, swamp gas, whatever. Well, there's no point doing that. We just have to assume that, from the story standpoint, we just have to assume that it's not one of those things, and we'll just go along with the story.
We just let the guest come on. We give the guest a platform to speak, and then we just, let them speak.
That's
and then if it's really up to the listener at the end of the day to go and research,
agree or disagree,
and
But if we, like I say, if there's a story we cover and we don't agree with it, then we'll generally point that out. I mean, today's photographs I don't agree with, but
definitely not a goat.
So definitely not a goat. Yeah. So that being said, but again, if you've got a question for us regarding that, or you want me to to do something in the future differently, then just email me or message me on Facebook. It's not a problem. Just go to the Don't Break the Oath Paranormal Hangout. I'm there, Lee Solway on there. Just message me or message Andy. So not a problem. So that being said, let's do the paranormal news and then we'll get into the show.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to another installment of the Paranormal News, broadcasting to you from places unknown, bringing you the top 3 paranormal headlines of the week.
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Is this the most haunted house in Britain? Ghost hunters hear voices and slamming doors and even sustain scratches during 100 terrifying hours in an ordinary-looking Yorkshire semi. Hardened paranormal experts were left terrified after spending 100 hours locked in what thought to be one of the most haunted houses in Britain. Nick Groff and his co-host Katrina Weedman visited the Black Monk House in Pontefract in Yorkshire to track down the infamous ghost thought to be behind a series of unexplained occurrences in the 1960s. Strange things started to happen once they were locked inside. Nick was woken in the middle of the night by a door that apparently slammed shut by itself, and Katrina even claimed to have been scratched by a violent ghost. Using high-tech cameras and specialist paranormal equipment, they picked up evidence of apparitions and voices, including a spirit they said spoke to them in a foreign language. Nick said he was called to Yorkshire by a ghost that was haunting him back at home in the US. He had recorded audio of a spiritual being whispering Pontefract, and said he believed he would never have peace until he visited the infamous haunted house. The home stands on an old battleground, meaning it was effectively built on a burial site for slain soldiers. That makes some sense. Speaking exclusively to FemMail, the investigator said he was terrified by the experience and called the ordinary-looking Yorkshire semi one of the scariest places he'd investigated in his decade-long career.
2.
From the Daily Star. Aliens have arrived. Footage of gigantic glowing UFO sparks fear of Armageddon. Because I get one of these a week. Okay, so it says the footage taken by terrified onlookers in northern Russia, shows a mysterious glowing ball of a light illuminating the night sky. Vasily Zhukov and this is a quote, thought it was the end of the world. He thought it was the end of the world. After capturing the baffling sight, he said how, after seeing the glowing ball, he went home to find local children, as young as 5, talking about aliens and the portal to another dimension. 5-year-olds talking about that in Russia, it's pretty open, isn't it? Another cameraman, Alexei Yakovlev, witnessed the phenomenon some 520 miles away from Vasily and admitted feeling scared. Gradually, the ball began to expand, and it became clear that it was not some radiance and became scary, he told the Siberian Times. People offered their views online on what the sighting was, one suggesting it was a gap in space-time continuum, and another simply adding, aliens have arrived. However, there may be more realistic reason for the sighting. Vladimir Putin fired a nuclear-capable ICBM along with 3 other missiles last night. From a mobile launcher, it was successfully aimed at Kuruk testing range in Kamchatka on the country's Pacific coast. It is thought the trace of the ICBM rocket, the Tupolev, is what caused the incredible light show over Russia.
Ah, right. So that's the
explanation.
1.
Shocking footage captures Indian women writhing in pain as they're whipped by priests in a bizarre ritual to cure them of evil spirits.
Wait for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, it turns them on, I suppose. Footage is from the annual festival at the ancient Akapan temple in Trichy. It shows 2,000 women queuing for 5 hours to be lashed on the floor by a priest. Or whatever. Many wince and writhe in pain as their family members watching shock. Shocking footage has captured Indian women being whipped during a bizarre ritual to free them of evil spirits. Every year, some 2,000 girls queue for 5 hours, right? It's not like a theme park. It's not like a theme park. I'm not getting a theme park feel here. To be lashed at the ancient Akapan temple in Trichy in South India. When it's their turn, the girls kneel on the ground to be ferociously flogged by a priest. One school girl, Vishkara, who was made to sit in a queue by her parents, said, "My parents think I'm possessed because I show no interest in my studies. Now my friends will laugh at me when they see the whip marks I'll get after attending a festival to cure mental disorders, cried the young girl. Other teenage girls were brought by their parents for either not attaining puberty or having irregular periods. This is one of the priests who administered the whipping during a festival in South India. I've got pictures, we'll put them on a hanger, whatever. Some teenage girls were brought by their parents for having not, say, attaining puberty or having periods. A priest insisted the whipping was not a crime. He said, "It is a belief of devotees and the practice is an ancient tradition we cannot alter." Some elderly women agree with the priest and believe the whipping will cure them. One 60-year-old said, "A lash here cures all the ills, physical or mental. I have been receiving lashes at the temple for the past decade, and I have been cured of my illness.
It's not working for her.
I have immense faith in the lashing."
Right, so we've got a couple of ghost stories for you today. Do you want to take it away with The Cage?
This is The Cage. It's a very, very, very good story. These are statements and stories from a paranormal investigator called John Fraser. So I'm going to read, the story of The Cage, and also there'll be some statements from paranormal investigators inside the house on what they experienced. Okay. Right, The Cage, or number 14 Colchester Road, to give its street name, is in St Osyth, a historic village in Essex. It was not a prison as such, but a local holding cell, which was used to hold prisoners until they could be presented to the magistrates, or in such cases as drunks let out when they were sobered up or whatever. It wasn't a prison, it's a holding centre. They were common before the days of a kind of like fast transportation. They were just put in there, then wait for the case to come up, took out magistrates and whatever.
Sent to Australia.
Yeah, whatever. Or then tried and executed or whatever. Right, The Cage was used in that capacity between the 16th century and 1908. It was famously used in 1582 for the incarceration of the accused witch Ursula Kemp. Now, Ursula Kemp, we're going to do a show on this, aren't we?
We're going to do a show on witches, and she's going to feature. But I mean,
I just want to our listeners just to give a brief account of this Ursula Kemp. Like many women of that time, she made a humble living through attending births, wet nursing babies, and treating the sick with herbal potions and lotions. Unfortunately, when Ursula's services were rejected by a pregnant neighbour in favour of another midwife, she exchanged such harsh words with the mother to be that when the young baby went on to die by allegedly falling from its cradle, it was suspected a curse had been placed on the infant. After that, villagers began to suspect that Ursula could treat or induce sickness and lameness at will, and she soon became a prime target for the witch hunter, landowner and magistrate Brian Darcy.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a kind of a just a brief on this Ursula, but I'm looking forward to when we do the full show on her. Yeah. So anyway, right, we're going to carry on with
because that's one of that's one of the this particular house, one of the entities that's meant to be allegedly haunting it is a witch.
Yeah,
in it.
And
so
also her associates, which was she was with other witches as well.
In there and all sorts of shit,
definitely right. Right, these phenomena included apparitions, poltergeist-style activity, such as sudden movement of Coke cans and sugar sachets of all things being thrown from one side of the kitchen and hitting Vanessa's cousin on the head when she was in the house alone. It even included one incident of blood apparently spontaneously appearing on the floor. Mrs. Mitchell initially had friends in the house who experienced much of the phenomena as well, but when her friends moved out, she found out she could not stay there with a young child. Her decision to leave was confirmed by an incident when she saw an apparition of a man standing over her child's cot. Since that time, the house has been hideout to paranormal investigation groups who have also experienced strange phenomena of various types. Right, so I'm going to give you a few reports of what's happened in the house by these investigators. Right, there's been footsteps on the staircase, okay? The latched bedroom doors suddenly jolted open without explanation. A number of cases of possible poltergeist scratches, people being scratched or poked without explanation, leaving unexplained marks on their skin. There have been 5 such incidents reported to date, including 3 of which we have pictorial evidence. A number of cases of uncontrollable fear or rage in some instances, not unlike what can be described as possession. So, while they are clearly subjective in themselves, they do not bear a distinct similarity to each other and seem to go far beyond the normal nervousness of staying in a haunted house. One experienced investigator reported, for example, "I began to feel as if my legs would not carry me anymore. I bumped into the wall, into the door, and just could not stand still. At one point, I suddenly felt a strong hatred towards a member of his team." So obviously, some kind of it is coming closer to him and trying to put
that happens in a lot of
emotion.
Yeah.
There's another investigator quoted, "I don't recall much, but I don't recall much, but I remember standing in the courtyard. Then I broke down. I started to cry uncontrollably." Another, again, he believed he had become possessed in some kind of way. Another stated that he felt suicidal after a visit, while there were other examples of people simply breaking down into tears. The similarity of these events to each other, which, when analysed, made me think they were valid to include, which caused these reactions, of course, remains open to debate. The investigation is still going on today. It's still going on today. So anyway, when Mrs. Mitchell moved out, she initially put the premises up for rent. Neither set of tenants stayed long, and at least one of the tenants reported numerous incidents to Mrs. Mitchell. In both these cases, it has not been possible yet to talk to the witnesses firsthand, and I am fully aware how much that would strengthen this case. Obviously, some people are not going to come forward and give their statements. Right. Since opening up to the paranormal investigators and receiving media attention in 2012, the cage has been investigated a number of times. There's been mediums gone in. There's been these equipment's been going in. It's a very, very active place. Again, I'll just read this bit. 14 Colchester Road is a fairly small 2 up, 2 down, semi-detached house, and as I said, it dates back from the 18th century. It actually stands next to a very pleasant public house and is in a well-used street. I have investigated underground prisons and ruined cottages surrounded only by wilderness and peat bogs, and can say quite frankly there is nothing about the cage that would prepare anyone for the strange effects so many have found when they dare to walk inside its doors. So that's obviously kind of a description of the house. Now I'd like to talk about the lady who owns it now. Right, this lady, Vanessa Mitchell, 43, from St Osyth, Essex, was unaware that the cottage known as the Cage was haunted when she moved in there in 2004.
She was aware.
She wasn't aware. No. She was unaware. She didn't know. Right? Since then, she claims to have numerously ghostly figures have pushed her over while heavily pregnant and smacked her on the bottom. I'm going to put these photos on the Hangout and let people to have a look at these, because again, they're quite freaky. They're very freaky. She even claims to have seen blood splatters appear on the floor. However, the nail in the coffin came for her when a CCTV camera picked up the image of what she claims was a satanic goat roaming the premises. Vanessa, who works in sales, said, "This face spotted on the picture and CCTV footage is a spitting image of a satanic devil." Right? "I honestly believe the house is cursed. I have lived there for years, but for me, seeing a tall dark figure standing between me and my son's cot was the final straw for me. Footage from the past couple of weeks shows a satanic goat, which reaffirms that the place is haunted by something malevolent. There's something evil in there, she says. Something demonic. Whatever is that's keeping the other spirits trapped inside. When Vanessa first bought the cage for $148,000 in 2004, she was unaware of its haunted history. The property, which was formerly a medieval prison, hosted one of England's most famous witch hunts, in which 8 women died. Again, we talked about the Ursula, but that'll be for another show. She has kept it for 11 years, making her its second longest owner, with previous buyers selling the property in under 4 years. So, you would have thought, though, obviously, they'd have to kind of tell people that it's haunted by
law. Yeah.
By law, so obviously, they haven't.
In England, it's a stipulation that if you're going to sell a house you believe or you know to be haunted, you do have to tell. And if the new owners find out that it is haunted, they can take the money back. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, obviously, someone hasn't told her. So she alleges anyway. Right, she continued, I have seen more than I could have imagined over the years in the cage, from being attacked while I was pregnant to being smacked on the backside. I was never warned about the paranormal activity in the house when I bought it, and I think I was drawn to it to try to help the house. The house has always been constantly up for sale before I bought it. It's a lovely house in a perfect location in a nice quaint village. But what's in the house makes people move, as in a little 6 months. A couple of 100 years ago, one man bought the cage for 150 quid and sold it for 50 quid, shortly after just getting rid of it. I'm selling the house now because the house is getting worse. We're catching evidence all the time of the tortured spirits inside. I've had every medium, psychic and investigator there is in to try and get rid of what's in there. One of the most shocking incidents to allegedly happen to her when she felt she was being pushed over when 8 months pregnant with her son Jess, who is now 8 years old. She said, it was absolutely terrifying. I just remember feeling the force of something had pushed me and falling on my side. When I was on the floor, I just lay there in shock. Another incident happened while I was brushing my teeth. Something gave me a hard smack on my backside when there was just me in the house. It wasn't a tap, it was a full-blown whack. It was such a vicious act, and there wasn't a person in sight. While I had company with me in the house, I felt safe, but when I was left on my own, I couldn't stand it. I never wanted to go home. It was truly ruling my life. Some nights I was so scared that I'd sleep with my head under the bed sheets and all the bedroom lights on. Since then, she's been researching history of the former prison and found out about plague victims sent there to die, along with modern-day suicides in the house. While the house is still for sale, she's continuing to look into its troubled history, into the hope of discovering why it's been so active and why the spirits communicate with living centuries on.
I think some people might link the suicides with the depression in the house.
Possible,
you know what I mean? Because obviously...
Well, then you've got people with the plague. Slow death in it. So obviously it's...
there's obviously a lot of...
definitely, yeah. There's a lot. Must be a lot of residual there as well, which is housed in a house anyway, so it needs clearing, basically. Right, Vanessa continued, it's very rarely that I go back to the house. I never go back on my own. I try not to step foot into the house. I know what's in there and don't want to go in because whatever is there recognises me. I've had the best paranormal investigators, the best psychics, the best mediums, trying to help the trapped souls in the house, but it's never worked. I don't think anyone can change it. But I've had enough of its spooky residence, and the recent devil goat picture has led me finally to put it back onto the market.
Okay.
So this is the cage.
What do you make of that picture? Because I'm not convinced.
It looks really freaky, mate.
It does look like... I mean, if someone says it
doesn't look... to me, it...
looks like an alien.
It's not a goat. I mean, it's definitely a shadow person. It's a shadow creature. But to me, it's not a... it's... I don't know where
alien. To me, I'm going paradise.
I'd say alien more because it doesn't... I can't see a goat in it. You know.
Yeah.
Now, if you saw the creature, it's like that kind of hoof cut.
Yeah.
Then you say, well, okay, it's kind of some
again,
kind of.
Some people might be familiar with this photo, but we'll put it up on the Hangout.
Yeah, and see what the listeners think of this photo, because
for me,
this is actually from CCT.
It just looks like a wall.
Footage.
And pareidolia's taken over, and it's making it look like a face, but it's only half a face, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
there's a couple bit, I'd say a bit there.
But like all the personal experiences from that. The people that have investigated and what she's saying and that. Obviously, I can't rule any of that out. So,
I mean, the psychic investigators have gone in, and they felt like some of them felt just to cry. So they're picking up the emotions from the house. They're maybe picking emotions up from the spirits of the house who are maybe still trapped in there anyway. There's definitely something trapped still there. I reckon half is residual, maybe half is. Maybe it sounds a kind of a mix of creatures, don't it? And Vanessa has said she's got the best psychics, the best mediums, to go in the house and clear the house, and it's
not worked.
Hasn't worked.
Very strange. But again, the photographs, they're not convincing me.
I mean, I'm looking at these now, and I mean, they look like goats too, Lee. I mean,
like aliens.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, obviously, if it's true, and obviously people from the plague, they got sent to that place to die. Exactly, I mean, they would have been maybe kind of
what she's filming. I'd like to see the video because it looks just like a wall, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is.
And then obviously it's just picking out a face from the wall. So, yeah. So
I would love to. Both of us to go maybe one day and have to check this place out. If we ever got a chance one day, I'd love to go.
Spend the night in the cage.
I'd be like a goodie in a. I'd be like a kiddie in a goodie shop, mate.
Yeah,
I would be. I'd just be,
Well, I'm sure I can arrange that for you.
For Christmas present, Lee.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe my Christmas present, mate. You can lock me. You can lock me in. I don't give a shit. I won't bother, mate.
So I was looking for a ghost story to do for today, and I came across this story about how the Russians were looking at ghosts, and I mean, I was looking at a lot of parapsychology, during the Cold War for espionage purposes, this kind of thing.
Yeah, there's been a load of experiments.
But I was surprised to see just how far back it went, because obviously during the Cold War, late 1940s to the early 90s, yes, I can understand that they'd be looking at this for espionage purposes, that kind of stuff. But their psychical research, if you will, goes way back to the 1920s, which surprised me, because you don't see Russia as one of these sort of, I don't want to say liberal, but like these countries that might research this kind of stuff. It almost seems like that, because obviously later on Stalin did suppress some of this.
Yeah, well, he had to, didn't he?
But the problem with that is that he's involved in a lot of these experiments. So I don't quite know. So I'm sure he was maybe on one hand looking into it, but putting out on the other hand that he's not looking into it to throw off the enemies kind of thing.
I think also I think it was to suppress his people as well.
That as well, yeah. But
it's like the royal family, innit? They've got all their treasures and we've got nothing.
Yeah.
But if you go they're better than us, with the way they're not. So.
Before getting into the ghost stuff, I mean, I'll just give sort of like an overview of the psychic stuff that there was researching. I mean, it goes right back to the 20s. I mean, there's an experiment happens in August, 20th of August, 1922, and there's a guy called Bernard Bernardovich Kaczynski. Okay.
Yep.
And he was a scientist, and he was really interested in telepathy, although he called it biological radio communications at the time, because but telepathy obviously wasn't wasn't a word then. So that's what he was really studying. Now he heard about this guy who was an animal trainer and tamer, and he had a real knack with animals, and it was alleged that this guy was taming the animals via communication,
right?
Telepathy, yeah.
Right, okay.
So he was, was obviously interested. Now this guy was called Jorov, and he had been a performer in the circus. He was a trapeze artist, as well as an animal tamer, this kind of stuff.
Yep.
So he was a bit of a showman. But some of the animals that he was even a clown at one stage. But some of the animals that he trained in his years of training animals included animals like dogs, monkeys, ducks, geese, goats, guinea pigs, bears, and even lions.
Right.
So he had some knack, right? Now you get people who are horse whisperers, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now we don't assume that these people are communicating telepathy, but they do understand the animal workings, more than we would. Like you get the same with snake handlers like Steve Irwin and running out.
You got a lot of people who can go to a nest of snakes and just go sleep with them.
Yeah.
They just don't bite him, don't get bitten or anything. It's kind of a natural thing to these people sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, some people
where people call them crackers or you nuts.
Yeah, it looks like some people are more prone to have this ability.
Yeah,
and maybe later on, this Kaczynski, he says that this can be worked on. It's not, it's not you're not born with. You can work on it. Everyone can do this. It's not just like certain people. So he was pretty convinced. But anyway, he meets this guy. Asks him about it, whether he'd be interested in this study, and he says absolutely. He says, yeah, you can come and test me. So they do. And they apparently did in the research time. They did 1,300 experiments trying to communicate with dogs. Now, he even looked at stuff like he built a Faraday cage. Okay, so this guy would be telling this dog to do things, and one of his dogs was called Mars, and he asked him, how do you communicate with Mars? He says, well, it's not really communication. He says, I look into his eyes, I look deep into his eyes, even past through his eyes, into his soul, if you will, and then I put the message into his head through without speaking.
Yep.
And the dog seems to understand. So he was interested how that was happening. So he built a Faraday cage, put him inside the cage, made him ask the dog, and it didn't work. While he was inside the Faraday, they had to open the door for it to work. So there was, if you like, that was sort of proof to him that there was some communication between, through the ether, like. Now I did a lot of experiments. One of the good ones with this dog called Mars, which was like it was almost like by the looks of him, he was like some sort of German Shepherd type dog, which are pretty intelligent anyway.
Yeah.
And he was able to do quite a lot of these communication, biological radio communications with him. One of them was and he said it took a while for the dog to pick up what he was actually telling him to do. So there was in one room, and down the corridor and into another room, there was a telephone book, okay? And he was communicating with the dog, go and get this telephone book. And the dog went in a room, had a look round, came back out, went into another room, had a look round, came back out, and he kept coming back in the room, and he kept, repeating this message in his mind. And eventually, the dog just sat up, run down the corridor, run into the room, grabbed the telephone book in its mouth, and came back and brought it to him. Now, that's more than coincidence, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
There was another one with...
There's no such thing as coincidence.
Well,
that's all.
There was another...
It's all by design.
Yeah, there was another dog with a dog called... I think the dog's name was Peaky, something like that. But he was like a little Jack Russell. And he communicated with him, and he wanted him to knock down this portrait. There's a portrait on the wall. So the dog apparently just sat bolt upright, just run across, jumped up onto the back of a chair, and then up from the chair, like, it was only little. It was like reaching up and scratching at his painting. And again, to me, it's...
So these cases, are they conclusive?
Well, I'm going to say no, because...
No. Right, okay.
Well, I'm going to say...
I mean, there's experiments that work, and there's experiments that are not conclusive.
I would say that it's more than coincidence, so let's call it that. But I mean, overall, Kaczynski's report said that there was 696 of their experiments with mental suggestion to dogs were successful.
Right.
Okay. But 528 were not. So it's nearly 50-50. But even 50-50 is pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, because if you're mentally controlling any animal, the fact that you can do it proves it's real. You know what I mean? Even if you just do it once, I guess. Yeah. But so anyway, there was that.
So I mean, if that is true, then to yourself, what would that prove? If telepathy exists, where is it coming from?
I mean, there's plenty of experiments, and there's the 87 0% experiment where they did this. What they did, they got people who had dogs and they asked people, does your dog show any signs of acknowledging you're on your way home before you should be on the way, kind of thing. So, for instance, say I come home at a certain time every night. Say I come home at 6 o'clock every night, which would be fucking nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But
not midnight.
So then my dog might know at 6 o'clock at night it's time for me to come home and start acting. Start running around the house, that kind of stuff. So it could just be time related, that. So what they did random stuff. So they said to people, right, and they did this one experiment with a woman where she was flying in, and her flight got delayed.
Yeah.
So the dog gets up from its bed, walks over to the door. It's like 10 minutes before she's meant to land in the country. Walks up to the door, sits at the door, sits there for 10 minutes, for whatever reason, realises that the owner's not coming home, goes back to its bed. An hour later, when the flight actually did land, it was scheduled to land at 7, it lands at 8, the dog gets up again, goes to the door, and sits by the door waiting for its owner to come back, and it stays there till she comes through the door. About half an hour later, whatever, an hour later. Now, there's other experiments where they film the house days on days on days, and they showed that the dog spends 0% of its time waiting at the door.
Right.
Okay. So it does, it does all the usual things. It runs around the house. It plays with toys. It eats its food. It sleeps. Okay. But at no point in the day does it go near the door. Okay. But until the owner's about to come home. So what they did to this, they said to this owner, said, right, go and run some errands. Random. Don't make it, because this say it's a Saturday, so say she's not at work, so it's not a usual time she's coming in and out. They said, choose a time when you want to go out and do your errands, and then come back after you finish your errands. So there's no way the dog can know, because it's not a regular thing. And anyway, so the woman goes out. Say she goes out at like dinner time. She comes back at like 3:15. So at 3 o'clock, 3:05, the dog waits by the door. So it gets out of its bed, walks over to the door. So it spent 0% of its day by the door until 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then it spends up to 87% of its time waiting at the door from 3. And then obviously the woman comes up. So there's some sort of telepathic communication going on.
Yeah, but not with a woman.
Not with a woman.
Because
but the dog,
again, she's not sending a signal,
but the dog's picking up. Yeah.
So the animals can pick up that frequency more better than humans.
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's that. I mean, these studies these been done today. These are not. So again, could elaborate more on that.
We can another time. Yeah.
But so it moves from animals, then it moves to humans. So they start finding psychics. Okay, people have been proven, like in the local village. So they start finding these, and they start trying to communicate send a psychic message between two. This is like 1928, this kind of thing, and they managed to send a couple of messages. They believe between Moscow and Leningrad, I think it was about 400-mile difference.
Yep.
Just via psychics. Okay. So they start doing stuff like this. And then we get into the Cold War. And like I say, I think the KGB really wanted to, who had the secret police force of Russia at the time.
At that time, still are.
They really wanted to, well, they reckon they've been devolved now, don't they? But,
yeah, I don't think so.
They really wanted to get a ghost for espionage purposes. They really wanted a spy, a ghost that could be a spy. Okay, so this means controlling a ghost. So what they did, they looked for stories in and around Moscow of people who had poltergeists living in their house. And it just so happened that just northeast of Moscow, in a place what's called the Golden Ring, there's these few towns up there, in a town called Zuztown, something like that. There was a Letanov family who had reported having this poltergeist living in their house. Okay, but the thing is about this ghost, and again, with poltergeists, if you believe poltergeists and that, what generally takes place is increased activity can bring out a poltergeist, and renovations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, which obviously open up a cellar or a basement.
Knock a wall down, and then whatever reason. So.
Yep.
This particular family was supporting poltergeist activity, but it was centered mainly around the bedroom, the husband and wife's bedroom. Okay. So, anyway, they get a knock on the door, and the KGB are there. There's 10 agents, and they say, right, we've heard reports of your house being haunted by a poltergeist. Now, these obviously imagine this family was shitting themselves at this point, you know what I mean? But they said, no, don't worry, we want to investigate it. So they welcomed them in, and they stayed there for a few weeks.
Yep.
Right, and the spirit moved from the bedroom and started becoming active around the house, moving objects, blowing out candles, all this kind of stuff. Okay, so the KGB were photographing it. Okay, and they reckon they got some photographs of it. There was books flying off, all this kind of stuff, which they reckon they photographed. But the family will never, still to this day, this was in 1968, still to this day, the family have never seen them photographs.
Right.
Okay. They've never been allowed to see them photographs that the KGB, and they must have got something because they stayed there a long while.
Yeah.
And the activity rarely picked up while these guys were in the house. Anyway, so they weren't getting nowhere for this particular ghost. So they got rumours that there was a ghost inside the city walls, and I think it was actually in His Majesty's home. Okay, so wherever he lives, the castle or whatever. So the KGB moved their operation there, and they set up cameras. And now there's a couple of videos which show ghosts, which they reckon they filmed at this time.
Yep.
And again, we can put them on the Hangout so people can look at them if you want to look at them.
Yeah.
They'll be on there to look at. Now I'm skeptical at best of these videos but again, because it's so good, you think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
well, this is where your trolls come in anyway.
Yeah,
because they put bullshit in there.
But is it because it is too good? It looks like bullshit. But
until you see it really actually happen when you're videoing it, you can say, hang on, I was there, I was videoing it, I was filming it, and it's not bullshit.
For whatever reason, it makes me feel skeptical looking at it. But that's from, I don't know why. It's just because it looks too good. But that seems like an oxymoron, doesn't it? Because you'd expect it to look good if it was real.
Well, I mean, we're going back 1968?
68, yeah.
So the video in them days wouldn't be what they are now today.
But the videos are good. But
right, okay.
One particular KGB agent, now he won't be identified, he won't give you his name and all that, but he says that he was part of this experiment. And it was his job to try and communicate with one of the poltergeists. And what he did, he gave it a simple task to do. Okay, so there was a dresser table in the room,
right?
And inside the drawer, so you got a dresser table. It's got 3 drawers underneath the mirror, and the middle drawer. He just put in every night. He'd put his watch in this drawer.
Yep.
And he'd ask the ghost to take out the watch and place it on a table at the other side of the room. So you go to bed, and he said he'd hear noises, and it took a while for the spirit to actually move the watch, but it did move the watch. Now, it moved the watch into various other places around the room. Even one morning, he woke up to find the watch inside his pillowcase.
Ah, right, okay.
Okay, so the room's shut off, is anyone in there? He wakes up in the morning, the watch is inside his pillowcase. Now, that's pretty random, innit?
Yeah.
And the fact that he never felt it during the night, it's a bit strange, but I think it was 6 weeks, this experiment, he'd been in this room asking the same thing every night for this ghost to do. After 6 weeks, the ghost eventually... Now, the ghost, again, there's footage of this.
Yep.
And again, it's whether up to you. It's pretty good footage. Yeah. Again, it's up to you whether you believe it or not. Yeah. But he says he got it on film, the ghost putting this watch, taking the watch out the thingy, and actually placing it on the table.
Okay.
Okay, so you see that. I mean, the other footage was in a hallway. It was just a ghost walking down the hallway. But again, it's that good that it's, questionable, which is stupid. But anyway, so months and months and months went by with this, and the problem was they had to give up in the end. The KGB gave up because the spirit was just too uncontrollable.
Well, I can't understand how you can control spirit. It's impossible.
Yeah, because
there's nothing to gain.
There's nothing for the spirit to
gain. You can't say to, oh, you do this and that. I mean, if you don't do that, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Or don't do that, I'm going to put you in prison. It's going to laugh at you.
Yeah.
It's going to slap you about.
That being part of the problem. See, this was a one-way street.
Yeah. Unless the spirit got, or unless the entity, unless the entity got something out of it.
Yeah. I was wondering. Well, I was thinking the only way, really, you could make the spirit do it is if it was a real patriot. And it wanted to do this for the good of the country, but...
No, I don't think so, because I think it would have realised by then, but because it had been brainwashed and bullshit anyway.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, when it got to
Then again, I think the only way you do it is if it's a really evil spirit.
Okay, so the ghosts really weren't working, or control of the ghost wasn't working, so they moved back into psychics. Okay, so we start looking at control psychics, are they real, that kind of stuff, and they start looking at remote viewing.
Right.
And it's the same time where the Americans were doing their remote viewing. There's the film The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yep.
That kind of stuff. So it's a similar time, similar things were going on. Now, they got one lady who was a renowned psychic at the time called Nina Kulagina. Nina. So she should have the cartoon series, shouldn't she? But she, again, there's quite a few videos of her doing psychic experiments. Well, she was moving objects, okay, but she's moving objects. She normally says she put like an object on the table, say like a bottle top or something like that. And she'll put her hands within a couple of inches of it, not touching it, but a couple of inches away from it, and she'll move it with her hand, and it almost looks like it's sort of magnetic field going on rather than to me looking at it. But again, there's quite a lot of videos, so I'll put some videos on the Hangout so people can look at it. But one of the good experiments she did now. And again, this was like, when they see this, it was like, oh, wow, the fucking Holy Grail here, because she was able to control the heartbeat of a frog. So they pinned the frog to the table, she put her hands over it, and she could reduce its heartbeat. In fact, she reduced it that much, the frog died. So again, they said, hang on a minute, can this be used on people? Yeah.
Did she bring the frog back to life? Do we know?
No, I don't think she did. I think
once it that's it. She couldn't actually restart her house.
No,
again.
I think it worked. No, so.
Right. Okay.
So the KGB, that was pretty good because they wondered if they could use this to
a weapon.
As a weapon, exactly.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Now, some of the objects she was moving, just before I move on, was generally there was objects up to 1 pound. Okay, so not a great deal of weight, and again, I think it's more magnetic than anything else what she was doing. Now, she did say when she was doing this, and she was concentrating, and if you watch the video, she really is concentrating. She would get sharp pains, severe pains in her spine.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a nervous system thing, I guess. And then her heartbeat would race to about 180 beats a minute. So, and again, this was a downfall later on because she actually induced an heart attack doing this, so that's why she gave the thing up.
Yeah.
But that was in the 1970s. But they actually tried this experiment on a guy. They got a guy as a volunteer to be the guinea pig, and she was able to slow his heartbeat and cause him severe pain and stop the experiment before they killed him.
Yep.
But again, like I say, the problem was from doing this constantly, she basically gave herself a heart attack. So she had to give up. So they moved on to other psychics at that point. Now, what they wanted to do, the ultimate aim for this was to produce these handheld, they call them psychotronics, generators. Okay, so what they managed to build a massive one.
Yeah.
But they wanted to do handheld ones. So they could give them all to their agents and then be able to, like a ray gun, you know what I mean, point at someone and induce a heart attack using this psychic energy. Now, they worked on a lot of these. Now, there's a guy called General Kalugin, who was a former KGB general, who actually talks about this and says that as to his knowledge, they did get these working, and they did work.
Right.
So I'll just play that clip now for people to
listen to this.
Listen to him talk about that.
Obviously, the Soviet security services could not stay indifferent to those efforts to produce a new, deadly or whatever mysterious weapon. So they tried to explore the mysteries of human power of other people and simulate a generator of the same nature, which produced a similar effect. But as far as I know, the military did produce something of that nature, and according to my knowledge, it was very successful.
Okay, so that's Kalugin then. So the problem, like I say, was that she induced an heart attack, so they moved on to another psychic. Now this guy was called Wolf Mensin. Now we could probably talk quite a lot about him, a full show on him, because he did a lot of things. But just in brief, just here, because obviously we're moving on. But there was an experiment where he was meant to have met with Einstein and Freud, okay? And Einstein was a non-believer in his psychic abilities.
Right.
Okay, so Freud said to him, right, he says, we want to do an experiment with you to see if this really works. So he says, what I want you to do is I'm going to think of something. So they're all sat at the table, sat there. I'm going to think of something, and then you carry it out. Are you willing to do that? And he says, absolutely, let's try it. So they're sat at the table, and he's just thinking this thought in his head. Freud's thinking this thought in his head. And then up steps Mensin, walks to the bathroom. So, excuse me, gentlemen, walks to the bathroom, goes in the bathroom cupboard, pulls out these tweezers, comes back, sits down on a chair, says, excuse me, Mr. Einstein, and plucks a hair out of his moustache, yeah? So Einstein, what the fuck, But he says, oh, and Freud starts laughing. He says, what are you laughing at, you twat? He says, well, that's exactly what I asked him to do in my head.
Yeah.
So again, more than coincidence,
no,
yeah?
There's no such thing as coincidence. I always say that, but it's true.
Yeah. So, again, he got himself quite a few enemies, this Mensin, because he predicted the outbreak of war.
Yep.
Okay, he predicted the rise of Hitler. He predicted the end of the war, and he predicted Hitler's death. Okay, so Hitler wasn't best pleased that he knew all this, knew how the war would go and all the rest of it. Obviously, when he's saying, "Oh yeah, Hitler's going to die," but so he actually put a 200,000 mark bounty on his head.
Right.
He wanted this guy dead. Now Hitler was, obviously into the esoteric and all that, so he probably wanted him on his side, but for whatever reason, he didn't want the Russians to have him, and he really wanted to get rid of him. So, like I say, he really made some enemies at the time, but drew interest from the KGB because of this experiment, and also Stalin wanted to use him as a secret weapon.
Yep.
Okay, so Stalin asks him to do. He says, "Look, if you want for this to work, we're going to need two to prove that it's true, it works, and you're not just a fraud." So he gave him 2 tasks, which are almost impossible, to be honest with you. But he gave him 2 tasks. The first was to rob a bank.
Right.
Okay. Using his psychic, he couldn't go in there with a machine gun,
Yeah.
But he said, yeah, using your psychic abilities, you need to rob a bank. And the second, well, I'll talk about the first. So the first task is to rob a bank. So he apparently this day, he's watched by the KGB at all times, so they knew how he did it and all that. So they had the guy in the bank watching him, observing him. And apparently he walked into the bank, and all he brought with him was a blank piece of paper. He put the blank piece of paper down on the counter, and he looked directly at the teller, and he projected into the teller's mind that this was a check for 100,000. What's the Russian currency? Rubles, yeah. 100,000 rubles. So he gives the check. The teller lifted the blank piece of paper up, looks at it, says, 1 second, sir, goes to the vault, withdraws his money, comes and gives it him back. And then says, have a nice day. And he just walks out of the bank. And the KGB guy's there looking at him. What the fuck just happened, But he did it, Blank piece of paper, that was it. So that was task 1, and he did it. So they gave him a second task, okay? And this one was, again, almost impossible. And this was to get into Stalin's private bunker. Okay, so now you're talking about a military complex, basically.
Yeah.
So you've got guys on the gate, you've got guards inside, then you've got servants inside. Now they're all former secret agents as well.
Yep.
So they're not just people off the street. They're all they're in a circle. So this day he walks up to the bunker, walks straight past the guard on the gate, looks at him. The guard doesn't move, just nods him, lets him walk on. Walks straight in. Walks past another 2 guys on the outside of the gate. Walks inside. Asks where he's going to one of the secret servants. Which way he's going. He says that stairs. Didn't question him. Walks past another guy on the landing. Walks right up to Stalin's door, and there's another guy stood there, and he thinks, and that guy moves away. Actually, they talk about him. The guards actually gave him a respectful distance.
Yep.
Moved away from him. Anyway, then he knocked on the door. Stalin says, "Come in," and he opens the door, and Stalin's blown away. How the fuck did you get in here? So they have a conversation, and he says, "How did you get in here?" And he says, "I did only one thing." And he said, "What was that?" He said, "I just projected into the minds of the guards and the servants that he was the head of the KGB, okay, which was a no-no. You don't never ever question this guy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't know what he looked like, and he was that revered and secretive and respected at the same time that if they thought it was him, they would never ever question him. Okay.
Yep.
So. So again, you know, that's a bit of a security concern in itself. The fact that you can have someone you can't question, you don't even recognize him, but you can't question him. You know, at the same time.
Could have been a hitman or anything, couldn't he?
So it would be nice for him to have known what he looked like, and then this might not have happened. But getting back to the psychotronics generators, again, these were going to be handheld objects, and apparently, like I say, Klukin said they did get this working, but the size of a walkie-talkie, that kind of thing. And you just be able to carry it in your pocket and then point it at someone and cause these things. Now, they reckon that some of the side effects from using this thing at people, so they reckon it did work, and it was stuff like illness, memory loss, like hyperactivity, that sort of thing, and obviously heart attacks was the main thing. Now, they reckon they got this working. Now, that all being said, right, the end of the Cold War, so 1991, I think, there was an arms agreement. You get rid of this, we'll get rid of this, that sort of shit.
Yeah.
But there was nothing in the agreement that dealt with psychic weapons.
Well, it won't come out with it. They won't release that.
So it's not on both sides, but there was nothing in there that dealt with this. So as far as we know, this has never stopped in Russia. This is still ongoing, and then we got in America we got the Montauk Project. So we know it's just
and it's growing as well, and evolving as well.
MK Ultra, so it's obviously going on both sides.
Well, we also know Tesla was involved as well, don't we? Nikola Tesla, with Einstein and the great ones as well.
Yeah,
the great minds.
So this is going on
I don't
both
think
sides.
Einstein's a great mind, but that's my view.
Up to now, it could still be going on today as well. That's where I can leave it. But that's the story of again, like I say, like Wolf Mensing, there's quite a lot to do about his story we could probably look into. But I mean, that's the general overview about how the Russians tried to control ghosts
and failed,
because the ghosts cannot be controlled.
Correct.
At this present moment.
Well, I cannot see ever control an entity, and I would not trust.
No.
Them, because you don't know who they are and what they are, because they can cloak themselves as well. They can come out over as a little child and everything's lovely dovely, but in there could be a nasty evil thing that wants to kill and maim and not trustworthy.
And that's it. And
maybe that's what they found.
Maybe you don't want to really give these spirits your secrets anyway, because because they could be working for the other side if this is true, because both sides are doing it. So, but anyway, that's that. So. Hope you enjoyed today's show.
Yes.
Stay tuned for the outro.
Yes, you love the outro.
It's a little bit of a.
We just put a few bits together, didn't we?
Yeah.
Not a few bits together and.
Yeah. So there's that. And thank you for listening. Subscribe.
Definitely subscribe. And,
tell a friend.
Yeah.
Get in touch with us, either email dbtopodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Via the website.
Get them to hang out. Come and say hello to us.
Just go on Facebook and search "Don't Break the Oath" podcast Paranormal Hangout.
That's where we are.
And come and say hello. Right, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Houston, we have a problem.
There's Klingons on the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bow. There's Klingons on the starboard bow, Jim.
Houston, we have a problem.
Life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it, not as we know it. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it, not as we know it.